God will help you to overcome financial challenges with faith. There are moments in life when money feels heavier than it should, not because of its weight in the pocket, but because of its weight on the heart. Bills pile up like unanswered questions, and each one seems to whisper a quiet accusation that you have failed, that you are falling behind, that God has perhaps turned his face elsewhere. Yet this whisper is a lie that survives only in the dark, for the light of faith reveals something altogether different. Financial struggle is not proof of divine neglect. More often, it is the classroom in which God teaches the soul to see beyond numbers and into eternal provision. Faith in such seasons is not the denial of reality, but the refusal to believe that reality has the final word. We are tempted to think that money is merely a practical matter, something separate from the spiritual life, as if God were concerned with souls but indifferent to rent, bread, and tomorrow's needs. But Scripture, experience, and honest reflection all contradict this false division. The God who counts the hairs on your head does not suddenly grow absent-minded when you open your wallet and find it thin. He knows the pressure that wakes you at night, the calculations you run again and again, the way anxiety steals joy before the day has even begun. Faith does not ask you to pretend these pressures do not exist. It asks you to place them in stronger hands than your own. When resources are scarce, fear often becomes the loudest voice in the room. Fear tells you that you are alone, that the future is closing in, that every mistake of the past is now demanding payment with interest. Yet faith answers fear not by shouting it down, but by speaking more truthfully. Faith says that your life is not sustained by income alone, that provision flows from a source deeper than employment and broader than opportunity. God has always delighted in supplying what his children need in ways that confound human expectation, not to embarrass human effort, but to remind us that we are not self-made creatures. The very breath in your lungs is already a daily gift, and the same giver has not exhausted his generosity. Financial hardship has a strange power to shrink the imagination. It narrows your thoughts to survival and trains your prayers to become little more than anxious lists. But God, who is never short of imagination, invites you to lift your eyes again. Faith stretches the soul so it can see that this season, painful as it is, may be shaping something sturdier within you than comfort ever could. When money is abundant, we are tempted to trust our plans. When it is scarce, we are invited to trust our provider. This invitation is not cruel, though it feels sharp at times. It is a summons into deeper freedom, where your worth is no longer measured by what you earn or lack. Consider how easily we confuse security with control. We think that if we could just manage our finances perfectly, foresee every expense, and avoid every risk, then peace would finally arrive. Yet peace built on control is always fragile, because control is an illusion that collapses the moment life does what it always does and surprises us. Faith offers a different foundation. It teaches you to rest not in your ability to predict tomorrow, but in God's faithfulness to meet you there. This does not make you careless, it makes you courageous. You still plan, you still work, you still act wisely, but you do so without the crushing belief that everything depends on you alone. God's help in financial challenges often arrives in forms we do not immediately recognize. We expect sudden windfalls, dramatic reversals, or unmistakable miracles, and sometimes these do happen. But more often, his help comes quietly, through endurance that lasts longer than you thought possible, through clarity that guides one small decision after another, through relationships that open doors you did not know existed. Faith trains the eye to notice these quieter mercies, to see that provision is not always loud, but it is always sufficient. Even manna fell one day at a time, never in hoarded heaps, teaching dependence rather than excess. There is also refining work that takes place when money is tight. It reveals what we truly rely on and what we truly fear. It exposes idols we did not know we had, such as the belief that financial success guarantees worth, or that poverty signifies failure. God does not reveal these things to shame you, but to free you. When faith replaces these false beliefs, you begin to understand that your value was settled long before your bank balance ever changed. You are loved not because you are prosperous, but because you are His. It is important to say plainly that faith is not a magic formula, nor is it a bargaining chip you exchange for blessings. God is not impressed by desperate optimism or coerced by perfect prayers. Faith is trust, and trust grows through honesty. You are allowed to bring your frustration, your doubts, and even your anger into God's presence. He is not fragile, and He is not offended by your questions. In fact, faith deepens when you dare to speak truthfully with Him, refusing to pretend strength you do not yet have. The Psalms are full of such prayers, and they are no less faithful for their rawness. As you walk through financial difficulty, you may notice that comparison becomes especially dangerous. It is easy to look at others who seem to prosper effortlessly and conclude that God has singled you out for neglect. Yet comparison always distorts reality. You do not see the hidden struggles behind another person's success, nor the unseen ways God is working in your own life. Faith invites you to measure God's goodness not by another's story, but by His promises, which remain steady regardless of circumstance. Envy drains strength, but gratitude restores it, even when attitude must begin with the smallest things. One of the quiet miracles of faith is how it reshapes your relationship with work. Instead of seeing labor merely as a desperate attempt to escape hardship, you begin to see it as participation in God's ongoing care for the world and for you. Your efforts, however modest they seem, matter. God often multiplies what is offered in obedience, not because the offering is impressive, but because obedience opens the door to His involvement. This does not guarantee immediate relief, but it does guarantee that your work is not wasted. Nothing offered in faith ever truly is. There will be moments when progress feels painfully slow, when prayers seem unanswered, and when the weight of financial pressure presses harder than your hope. In those moments, faith may look less like confidence and more like stubborn persistence. It is the decision to keep trusting even when emotions lag behind belief. It is the choice to say, I do not yet see how this will work out, but I believe God is still at work. Such faith is not weak, it is resilient. It survives not by denying pain, but by refusing to surrender meaning. God's help also often comes through community. Though pride may tempt you to isolate yourself, financial struggle can carry shame, but shame thrives in secrecy. Faith, by contrast, invites humility and connection, allowing others to help you, whether through counsel, support, or practical assistance, is not a failure of faith, but an expression of it. God frequently chooses to meet needs through His people, reminding us that we were never meant to face life alone. To receive help graciously is as spiritual an act as to give it. As faith grows, you may find that your prayers begin to change. Instead of asking only for relief, you start asking for wisdom, for patience, for integrity, for the ability to honor God even when resources are thin. These prayers are powerful because they align your heart with God's purposes, which extend beyond temporary comfort into lasting transformation. And often, as these deeper prayers are answered, practical provision follows in ways that feel less accidental and more intentional, as though each step has been quietly guided. There is a peculiar freedom that emerges when faith loosens money's grip on the soul. You still care about meeting your needs, but money no longer defines your hope or your despair. You begin to understand that abundance is not merely having more, but needing less of what cannot satisfy. In this freedom, generosity becomes possible even in scarcity, not because you have excess, but because you trust that God's supply is not exhausted by your giving. Such generosity is not reckless. It is rooted in confidence that God's economy operates by different rules than fear. Do not underestimate the spiritual strength being forged in you right now. The patience you are learning, the humility you are practicing, the trust you are developing, these are treasures. These that cannot be stolen by market shifts or lost through miscalculation. Financial seasons change, sometimes suddenly, sometimes slowly, but character endures. God's aim is not merely to bring you out of difficulty, but to bring you through it with a faith that is deeper, steadier, and less easily shaken. You may one day look back on this season with a clarity that is impossible now. What feels like delay may reveal itself as preparation, and what feels like deprivation may reveal itself as protection. Faith does not promise that every struggle will make sense immediately, but it does promise that nothing endured with God is meaningless. Even now, in ways you cannot yet trace, He is weaving provision, wisdom, and purpose together, often using threads you would never have chosen. So when the numbers do not add up, when the future feels uncertain, and when hope seems fragile, remember that faith is not a feeling you wait for, but a posture you choose. It is the decision to lean into God's faithfulness when your own strength runs thin, to believe that the same God who carried you this far has not run out of care or creativity. He is still attentive, still present, still working. And as you continue to walk forward, trusting Him with today before demanding answers about tomorrow, you may begin to notice that even in the midst of financial strain, there are signs of grace unfolding quietly, steadily, inviting you to keep going, to keep trusting, to keep believing that the story is finished, and that God's help, though sometimes delayed and often disguised, is already nearer than you think, shaping your steps even now as you move forward with faith into what comes next, holding on to the promise that provision is not only about what fills your hands, but about what steadies your heart as the journey continues and the path ahead remains open, unfinished, and still being written in ways that call you to remain attentive, hopeful, and willing to trust beyond what you can presently see. Even now, as you stand within the tension of unanswered prayers and unresolved needs, faith invites you to look again at the nature of God's timing. We are accustomed to thinking of delay as denial, as though love must always act quickly to be sincere. Yet anyone who has watched a seed grow understands that what appears as inactivity is often the busiest kind of work. Beneath the surface, roots are forming, systems are strengthening, and foundations are being laid that will one day support visible growth. Financial hardship often hides this underground labor of God, where He prepares you not only to receive provision, but to steward it with wisdom, gratitude, and humility when it comes. It is worth noticing how easily desperation narrows our prayers into demands. We ask God to fix things now, to remove discomfort immediately, to restore what was lost as quickly as possible. And while God is compassionate towards such cries, He also sees further than the present pain. Faith begins to mature when you learn to trust that God's slower answers are not careless ones. He is not ignoring urgency. He is shaping outcomes that will not collapse under the weight of tomorrow. What He builds slowly tends to last longer, and what He gives after preparation is less likely to become a burden rather than a blessing. There is also the matter of identity that financial struggle presses upon the soul. When money is scarce, it becomes dangerously easy to let lack define you. You may begin to think of yourself primarily as someone who is behind, who is failing, who is perpetually catching up. Faith challenges this quiet erosion of identity by reminding you who you were before the struggle began. You were a person made in God's image, called with purpose, known by name, and loved without condition. That truth did not change when your finances did. The challenge is not that God has forgotten who you are, but that hardship tries to make you forget. Faith also teaches you to reinterpret the meaning of success. The world often measures success by accumulation, speed, and visibility. God, however, seems far more interested in faithfulness, depth, and endurance. You may be succeeding in ways that will never appear on a balance sheet. Each time you choose honesty over shortcuts, patience over panic, trust over despair, you are participating in a kind of victory that heaven recognizes, even if the world does not applaud it. These victories are quiet, but they are real, and the why shape a life that can withstand both scarcity and abundance without losing its soul. There are seasons when God allows you to experience the limits of your own strength, not to humiliate you, but to free you from the exhausting illusion of self-sufficiency. Financial challenges have a way of exposing how much pressure we place on ourselves to be everything. fix everything, and foresee everything. Faith gently dismantles this burden by reintroducing dependence, not as weakness, but as wisdom. To depend on God is not to abdicate responsibility, it is to recognize partnership. You work, you plan, you persevere, but you do so knowing that outcomes are not carried on your shoulders alone. You may notice that as faith grows, anxiety loses some of its authority. It does not disappear entirely, but it no longer dictates every thought. Instead of spiraling endlessly through worst-case scenarios, you begin to anchor your mind in what is presently required of you. Faith narrows your focus in a healthy way, drawing your attention to obedience today rather than catastrophe tomorrow. This is not avoidance, it is trust. God rarely reveals the entire path at once, not because he is secretive, but because he wants you to walk with him rather than race ahead alone. One of the most difficult aspects of financial strain is the way it can strain your relationships. Stress shortens patience, fear sharpens words, and exhaustion reduces empathy. Faith becomes practical here, calling you to guard your heart against bitterness and resentment. It reminds you that people around you are not the enemy, even when they do not understand your struggle or respond as you hoped. God often uses relational faithfulness as part of his provision, sustaining you emotionally even when material relief seems slow to arrive. Peace in relationships becomes a form of wealth that scarcity cannot erase. As you continue to trust God through financial difficulty, you may begin to notice subtle shifts in perspective. Small mercies take on greater significance. A timely conversation, an unexpected opportunity, a moment of clarity, or even a day without overwhelming worry begins to feel like evidence of God's nearness. Faith sharpens awareness. It trains you to see God not only at the finish line, but along the road itself. In this way, hardship does not become a barren wasteland, but a place where God's presence is discovered more attentively. It is also important to remember that faith does not forbid ambition or improvement. Trusting God with your finances does not mean resigning yourself to stagnation. On the contrary, faith often awakens courage to pursue growth, learning, and change. It may prompt you to develop new skills, to seek counsel, to explore paths you previously dismissed out of fear. Faith does not paralyze initiative, it purifies it. When fear no longer dominates your decisions, you are freer to act wisely rather than react desperately. There will be days when faith feels effortless, and days when it feels like resistance against an unseen current. On the harder days, faith may look like nothing more than refusing to give up. It may sound like a quiet prayer uttered without emotion, or a simple choice to do the next right thing even when motivation is low. These moments matter more than you realize. They are acts of trust that accumulate over time, forming a resilience that does not depend on circumstances being favorable. God's help often unfolds in layers. What you perceive as partial relief may actually be the first stage of a larger work. You may receive just enough to keep going, just enough clarity to take the next step, just enough encouragement to prevent despair from taking root. Faith learns to be grateful for this enough, recognizing it as intentional rather than accidental. God's provision frequently arrives calibrated to growth, not comfort, ensuring that reliance on him deepens rather than diminishes. You may sometimes wonder why God allows financial challenges to linger even when you are sincerely trying to trust him. While there are no simple answers, faith assures you that suffering is never random in God's economy. He wastes nothing, not even the waiting. The endurance you develop now will serve you in future seasons, whether those seasons bring abundance or new forms of challenge. Faith prepares you not just for improvement in circumstances, but for consistency in character across changing conditions. As trust deepens, you may find that your relationship with God becomes less transactional. Instead of viewing prayer as a means to secure outcomes, you begin to experience it as communion. You speak with God not only about what you need, but about who you are becoming. Financial struggle, in this way, becomes a catalyst for intimacy. It strips away superficial dependence and invites a more honest, enduring connection, one that does not collapse when answers are delayed. It is also worth considering how faith redefines generosity during hardship. Generosity is not measured by amount, but by posture. When you give time, encouragement, prayer, or even a small material gift, despite your own limitations, you are participating in God's character. Such acts are not unnoticed. They align your heart with a kingdom where value is not calculated by surplus alone. Faith teaches that generosity is not postponed until abundance arrives, but practiced even in scarcity as a declaration of trust. Over time, you may notice that financial challenges lose their power to dominate your identity and imagination. They remain real, but they no longer define the horizon of your hope. Faith stretches that horizon, reminding you that your life is larger than this season. God's purposes are not confined to your current limitations. He sees the long arc of your story, and He is shaping it with a wisdom that outlasts temporary lack. There may come a moment when provision arrives in a way that feels almost anticlimactic. Because it is insignificant, but because faith has already done its deeper work. You are grateful, of course, but you are no longer desperate. The relief is real, but so is the strength you gained while waiting. In such moments, you begin to understand that God's greatest gift was not merely the resolution, but the transformation that occurred along the way. Until that moment arrives, faith continues to invite you into daily trust, not heroic trust, not dramatic declarations, but quiet perseverance. It asks you to wake up and choose hope again, to resist the temptation to interpret difficulty as abandonment, to believe that God's help is not absent simply because it is not yet obvious. Faith anchors you in the truth that God is present in the process, attentive to every step, every concern, every prayer whispered or unspoken. And so you continue forward, not with perfect certainty, but with steady trust. You learn to hold your needs honestly before God, while releasing the demand to control how and when He responds. You discover that even in financial strain, life still contains meaning, beauty, and purpose. Faith keeps your heart open, your hands willing, and your spirit attentive. As the journey unfolds, step by step, provision by provision, shaping you quietly as you move onward, trusting that the same God who has carried you through uncertainty so far is still at work ahead, guiding, sustaining, and preparing you for what lies beyond this moment, even as the story can tie. News to unfold without closure, inviting you to remain faithful, watchful, and willing to trust Him further as the path stretches forward into what has not yet been revealed. As the days pass and the rhythm of your life continues under the weight of financial uncertainty, faith begins to work in quieter, more interior ways. It reshapes not only what you expect from God, but how you listen for Him. You start to notice that guidance often comes less as thunder and more as a steady inner nudge, a sense of restraint here, a gentle encouragement there. Faith sharpens discernment. It teaches you when to wait and when to move, when to hold on and when to release. In financial matters especially, this discernment becomes a form of protection, guarding you from decisions born purely out of panic rather than wisdom. There is something profoundly humbling about realizing how little of life we truly control. Financial struggle has a way of bringing this truth into sharp focus. Plans unravel, projections fail, and the future refuses to be tamed. Yet humility, when embraced rather than resisted, becomes fertile ground for faith. It opens the heart to receive guidance instead of insisting on mastery. God's help often arrives most clearly when you stop insisting on your own timing and begin to ask, with genuine openness, what obedience looks like in this particular moment. You may find that faith also changes the way you speak about your situation, both to yourself and to others. Words have weight, especially when repeated in isolation. To constantly declare defeat, scarcity, or hopelessness is to reinforce those realities within your own spirit. Faith does not require you to lie or deny difficulty, but it does invite you to speak with hope-infused honesty. You learn to say, "This is hard, but God is faithful," rather than allowing hardship to monopolize the narrative. Over time, such speech reshapes expectation and steadies the heart. Another subtle work of faith is how it teaches you to endure uncertainty without becoming cynical. Financial strain can tempt you toward bitterness, especially if you feel you have done everything right and still find yourself struggling. Faith acknowledges the injustice of a broken world without concluding that goodness is an illusion. It allows you to grieve unmet expectations while still believing that God's purposes are not thwarted by temporary loss. This balance is not easy, but it is essential. Cynicism hardens the soul. Faith keeps it tender without making it naive. There are moments when faith will require you to forgive, not only others, but yourself. Financial difficulty often carries regret, replaying past decisions with relentless clarity. You may wish you had saved more, chosen differently, acted sooner. While reflection can teach, self-condemnation only paralyzes. Faith invites repentance where needed, but it also insists on grace. God does not define you by your worst financial decision any more than He defines you by your best one. Forgiveness clears the way for growth, allowing wisdom to emerge without shame as its tutor. As faith matures, it often simplifies life. You begin to distinguish more clearly between needs and wants, between what truly sustains you and what merely distracts. This simplification is not impoverishment, it is refinement. You discover contentment, not because you have everything, but because you are no longer ruled by everything you lack. Faith reorders desire, aligning it more closely with what actually brings peace. In this way, financial challenge can become a surprising ally. Teaching lessons abundance often obscures. God's help also appears in the way faith strengthens perseverance. When relief is slow, perseverance becomes an act of worship, a daily offering of trust. You continue to show up, to apply, to work, to learn, to adjust, even when outcomes are uncertain. This persistence is not fueled by blind optimism, but by grounded confidence that effort offered to God is never wasted. Faith transforms perseverance from mere survival into purposeful endurance, infused with meaning beyond immediate results. You may also notice that faith gradually loosens the fear of the future. While uncertainty remains, it no longer feels like a threat looming over every decision. Instead, it becomes a space where God's faithfulness can be revealed in new ways. Faith does not promise predictability, it promises presence, knowing that God will meet you wherever you are. Rive brings courage to face what you cannot yet see. This courage does not eliminate planning, but it prevents planning from becoming obsession. In financial hardship, it is easy to imagine that life is on hold until circumstances improve. Faith challenges this assumption. It insists that life, real and meaningful life, is happening now. Relationships still matter. Growth is still possible. Joy, though quieter, is still available. God does not postpone His work in you until your finances stabilize. He works in the midst of instability, shaping character, deepening trust, and expanding compassion. Faith teaches you to live fully even when resources are limited. Compassion, in fact, often grows more naturally in seasons of lack. When you know what it is to struggle, you become more attuned to the needs of others. Faith uses this awareness to cultivate empathy rather than envy. You begin to see people not as competitors for limited resources, but as fellow travelers in need of grace. This shift changes how you engage with the world, making kindness less conditional and generosity more instinctive. There may be times when God's help comes in the form of redirection rather than rescue. A door closes, an opportunity dissolves, a plan fails, and faith must reinterpret disappointment. What feels like loss may actually be protection, steering you away from paths that would have demanded more than they could give. Faith learns to trust not only what God provides, but what He withholds. This trust does not come easily, but it grows as you look back and recognize moments when closed doors spared you unseen harm. As you continue to trust God with your financial challenges, your understanding of prayer may deepen. Prayer becomes less about persuading God to act and more about aligning yourself with His wisdom. You begin to listen as much as you speak, to wait as much as you ask. In this listening, faith often receives insight that reshapes priorities and clarifies next steps. Prayer becomes a place of recalibration, where anxiety is exchanged for perspective and fear is gently dismantled. It is also worth noting that faith does not guarantee that every financial challenge will resolve in the way you imagine. Some struggles give way to abundance, others to stability, still others to ongoing simplicity. Faith prepares you for all of these outcomes by anchoring your hope not in specific results, but in God's unchanging character. When your confidence rests there, you are less shaken by the form provision takes. You learn to receive what God gives with gratitude rather than disappoint. Intimate. Over time, faith creates a resilience that is difficult to explain but easy to recognize. You may still face challenges, but you face them differently. Panic gives way to prayer, despair to determination, isolation to connection. This resilience is not bravado, it is rootedness. It grows from repeated encounters with God's faithfulness, small and large, that accumulate into quiet confidence. Financial strain becomes less of an identity and more of a context in which faith is exercised. There is also a deepening honesty that faith brings. You become more truthful about your limits, more willing to ask for help, more open about your needs. Pride loses some of its grip, replaced by a humility that invites support rather than resents it. This honesty is liberating. It allows God and others to meet you where you actually are, not where you pretend to be. Faith flourishes in such authenticity. As the journey continues, you may find that hope returns in unexpected ways, not as a sudden surge of optimism, but as a steady assurance that your life is held, that your efforts matter, and that God's help is not theoretical but active. This hope does not depend on immediate improvement. It rests on the conviction that God is present in the process, attentive to every detail, working through both provision and patience to shape something enduring. And so, step by step, you keep moving forward. You learn to trust God not only for financial breakthrough, but for daily strength. Why? Oh, discover that faith is not a destination reached after hardship ends, but a companion that walks with you through it. As days turn into weeks and weeks into seasons, faith continues its quiet work, reshaping how you see money, security, and yourself. The path ahead remains open, unfinished, and still unfolding, inviting you to continue trusting, continuing listening, continuing to walk with God through uncertainty, knowing that His help is not confined to outcomes, but present in every step, every decision, every moment of perseverance. As the story continues onward without final resolution, calling you to remain faithful within the journey itself. So let this be the truth you carry with you as you step forward from this moment. Your financial challenges are not the end of your story, nor are they evidence of God's absence. They are a chapter, difficult and demanding, yet deeply meaningful, in which faith is being strengthened, vision is being refined, and dependence on God is being made real rather than theoretical. You may not yet see the full picture, but you are not walking blindly, you are walking with a faithful God who sees the end from the beginning. Every prayer you have whispered, every tear you have hidden, every effort you have made in quiet perseverance has been seen and counted. God's help is not delayed by indifference, nor limited by circumstance, and His provision often arrives in ways that shape the heart before they change the situation. Hold fast, then, not to fear, not to scarcity, not to the weight of uncertainty, but to faith itself, steady and resolute, trusting that the same God who is sustaining you now will also carry you through, restore what is needed, and lead you forward with wisdom, peace, and hope that does not disappoint.